peace. This computer talks too much. Just a minute, I'll get that. There we are. Well, good morning again, and it's another month, another power. And the power of the month is power. It's actually power, and because it was confusing to people, I think they put a slash and we used dominion as well, power and dominion. I think, right, he sent me something during the week. Why don't we call them the 12 gifts? Well, if that's not too heretical at headquarters, I suppose we could. But I think we better leave that as it is for the time being. Mind you, there are changes going everywhere in the world as we now attempt to enlarge how we learn about spirituality, present spirituality to the world. All of a sudden, things seem to have changed. So I follow 3 churches in the States, and their congregations are half empty, but they seem to have a reasonable online presence, not as big as they had during COVID, but there's a balance, and I know everywhere ministers and people on committees and anyone that comes along are looking for ways that we can now learn about spirit and present spirit in a maybe a wider way, a different way. Some of us remember the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It was first published in 1997 and has been translated into 15 languages, and despite the many books now available, is still a go-to for many, many people. And how is spirit presented? Well, this was featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show and many other media outlets, and people got to see it that wouldn't be coming to buildings like this or churches. This book introduced spiritual principles in a way most people, if they are receptive to it, could understand regardless of religion, culture, robes and ritual. Because it's in consciousness that we understand, not time. We could be here for a whole lifetime and still not get it. But if your consciousness is ready, boom. Many hundreds of books have saturated this spiritual New Age wellness market, and I'm sure each one has a different spin, regardless of the whoever wrote it. I see a lot of the stuff is the same yesterday, today and tomorrow. Same as we've got in those old Unity books there that hardly have ever been out over the last 10 years. The wisdom is there from the early authors. However, we need to present them in a different way. And I find this liberating because those who are not inclined to go to the Bible or any one of those religious books, and books like The Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis, and there's other lofty tomes, which I don't mind that one, by the way, because I can see it metaphysically. They have books on the market, and I noticed when I was doing a bit of travelling, when you go to the airport bookshop, it's always a joy to see what's up there next. And I think it's still happening. I haven't bothered now, I'm not doing much reading. So it's presenting these topics to people, as I said, that sow seeds. They mightn't do anything straight away, but it sows seeds. And I'm not going to go into the metaphysical meaning of the parable of the sower, but if you feel inclined this month, have a look at that parable and look for the metaphysical meaning of it. Jesus said over 2,000 years ago, "Preach my gospel to the whole world." Now, I've tried to do that, but I'm afraid it's become more than what Jesus said. It's become very institutionalised, so it's back to basics. Maya Angelou, who is a famous African-American, and she said, "I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better." And isn't it good to know that we can always do better? I seem to be harping on this at the moment, but enlightenment, part of enlightenment is scary. You know, not just the angel there and all that sort of stuff. You look back in your life and you think, my God, did I do that? How stupid. But imagine having a life where we didn't know that. And we know that the law of grace says start again. And we can. We're given a free slate to start again. It was a giant step for the founders of New Thought around the middle 1800s to bring these ancient spiritual laws free from restraint of the established churches of the day. The Fillmores were in the Bible Belt, and it was quite a segregated place. And pretty basic Bible stuff was there. The Fillmores didn't originally want to start a church, but they presented the principles for people to use in their own way, in their own religion. But gradually, as things happen, you need a corporation, because if you do that, you get that done, you get that done, then you need a committee, and all of a sudden, it becomes something else. So, these teachings, it was a huge time. It was the first Parliament of World Religions in the late 1800s. And I think it was Vivekananda or someone, I forget the name, but something like that. And he presented things, and later on, of course, but these lessons started to be perpetrated. Some of the early language was pretty heavy going, and I've been here 20 years, and before I was a minister even, people were saying, oh, this book's so old-fashioned. But I thought, my God, but look what's in it. Who cares how old-fashioned it is? And the one I'm talking about is Lessons in Truth by H. Emily Cady. This was first printed in 1986, and she wasn't a Unity member. She didn't want to join any of that stuff. But the Fillmores used her writings. It contained 12 lessons in practical Christianity and is still in use. It's been jazzed up a bit, but it's not going to please everyone. There'll always be something in it. And also Unity have edited it and added things to it. She never added Bible verses, but she did add, the Mark 12:15. She just put the paraphrase of what it is. And so they've did that. Then all of a sudden they had a question and answers. And she wasn't too happy about that. She said, I don't want it to become academic. But anyway, it was out of her hands. It was published. The other big one, also not a Unity writer, is Florence Scovel-Shinn, The Game of Life and How to Play It. She was a fantastic artist. She drew beautiful children's drawings, and she also had quite a good life. She went her own way with her own poems and books, just quietly, independently getting them published. And I think most of us have seen or read a bit of The Game of Life and How to Play It. Have we? Have some of you? Good. Leslie?
Princess Diana was photographed with it under her arm.
Wow, that's Princess Diana was photographed with that book under her arm. There's a few comments I could make there. Pity it wasn't open. Anyway, but isn't it good how Spirit has spread the book? Anyway, this has been a big influence on many people. But even now, the language and style are definitely of another era. So here we are. What is our era and what is the truth for us? It's never been a secret, and we all know that book, The Secret, and I've got a rough idea that the lady that wrote that book was here. She came and sat in the back, and I forget who was the minister, and she was asking people questions. Rhonda Byrne, I think her name was, and she has been here, but she didn't introduce herself, or maybe she wasn't as far ahead in her project as that. But that book was massive. And there's been other books that she's written as well, but they really haven't had the same effect on me anyway as that first book did, The Secret. So, The truth will only resonate when we're ready and we've got the consciousness for it. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. We don't often realise it. It'll have been and gone. How often has someone come into our lives and just quietly been there for us? And not that we take it for granted, but we think, my goodness, yeah, then they've gone. A music teacher in high school could see that I had medium talent, and so she introduced me to one of the dance bands that was playing in Burnie, of all places, in Tasmania, and I learned how to play a few chords, and then every Saturday night I was able to go and play the piano in this dance band. And I got £1, I think it was, which was a big deal then. Only I didn't tell my parents. My mother went into my room and saw about £20 sitting in my shelf. And she said, "What's this?" And she said, "You get paid for that." I said, "Yes." And being a typical Scots lady, she said, "Well, I think you should be paying some to us." So I did. But I have to say, when I took piano lessons, I actually paid for them out of that money. I wasn't a brilliant pianist, but I did have to go back and do the basics, and a few chords are fine, but to understand music and read it and all that sort of stuff. So that was an interesting time. Now, some of the topics in these modern books, we recognise them from the Bible and other books. Impertinence and the cycles of life, we look at in Ecclesiastes, there is a time and place for everything. We've all heard that. And the golden rule is quite often paraphrased, relationships as spiritual practice. The joy of being, the power of gratitude. And in that book by Tak Nak Hin, if that's how you pronounce it, he was amazing. I don't know whether I'd have the patience to do it, but every breath you breathe in, you say thank you, you bless yourself. And when you breathe out, you bless everyone else. Well, we can do it for a little while, but after a while, you know, you've got to be careful if you're driving and doing things like that. But I get what he's on about. And the Dalai Lama has a few of those things too that we've all come across. Now, the inscription on the front cover of The Power of Now is, "You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold." That is how important you are. And one of the unity teachings is that we are responsible for everything. We don't want to hear that. We want to think someone else maybe do it. How dare they? But I am responsible for all my actions, especially now I've been introduced to the law. There's no excuse, but we're not saints yet, despite Leslie calling me a saint from time to time. So every time we say something similar, like to the three truths, and as we're all living and unfolding together in this mystery school of life, because I like to call it that, we get caught up in everyone else's dramas. We can be like a spider caught up in its own web. We can't see beyond the present circumstances that we have created using that power that has been invested in us. We didn't invent the power, but it's in us. We are it expressing. Eckhart Tolle again. Eternity does not mean endless time, but no time. Have to think about that. No time. The man Jesus had gone beyond consciousness governed by time, into the realm of the timeless, and lived from the awareness of the Christ consciousness which is in us. Paraphrased, don't get attached to any one word or interpretation. We can substitute Christ for presence, if that is more meaningful to us, our Buddha nature, and there's a heap of them. I look forward to when we have a book with all the religions metaphysically interpreted. Christ refers to our indwelling divinity regardless of whether we're aware of it or not, whereas presence means our awakened divinity of God or essence right here and right now. Now, this shift in perspective for those brought up in the old Sunday school tradition can be a little bit unusual and a bit confusing. Many churches and mega churches of the world are waiting for the second coming of Jesus the Christ. And Toll goes on to say, the second coming of Christ is a transformation of human consciousness, a shift from time to presence, from thinking to pure consciousness, not the arrival of some human being. We can then see that there is no mine or yours in presence. Presence is one. This is what is so important when we come together in a group. We intensify this light, this presence. And I had a very good chat with Diane, who's on here today. Diane, thank you for sharing that story. Can you say it for us? About the, I'll find out if people can hear you.
Yes, during the Second World War in England, England being attacked by the Germans at that point, a group run by a woman called Joan Fortune decided to gather together to meditate for 1 minute each night. And this spread throughout the whole community. The government was behind it and the BBC was behind it. And so at 9 o'clock each night, for some months, it seemed like the whole community would stop and pray and meditate on peace. And of course, they were attacked, but were not defeated. And then after the war, this movement died out, but it's actually sprung up again since 9/11. And it exists today, and I've just joined it recently. And they still gather together in their own homes. They just stop at 9 o'clock each night for 1 minute. And 9 o'clock in Greenwich Mean Time equals 7 a.m. in Eastern Standard Time in Australia. So it's possible for some of us, if we wish to do it.
Well, thank you for that. And power of two or more. Some of us have studied and demonstrated this in depth. We've used a contemporary book published recently, 2017, The Power of Eight by Lynn McTaggart. In modern language, this book offers demonstrations of the saying of Jesus in Matthew 18, verse 19 to 20, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. Our intention circle, some of them are here today, do this every week for us. Even so, we still have to do our own inner work and be reactive to acting on that inner guidance given. And I'd like Leslie to come up and share something with us about that particular group, the intention circle. Thank you, Leslie.
It's our privilege to